Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I am doing this recording on September 1st. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can also help support the work that I do by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me. You can also follow me on X and on GETTR. And you can help with the free content that I do, because all my videos are for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. You can help by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. I personally think that if you're covering the news, you should provide this for free and that people will help support your work. Also, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I have. I have very high quality supplements that'll help to improve your health and wellness, improve your immune system, slow down the aging process. These are supplements that I take. If you follow the protocol, you will get healthy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. So just click the link and go to the store. I'm going to cover some of the breaking news, and then I'm going to do another video after this that will go into a new perspective that I have about foreign policy that I think is kind of unique, that you probably have not heard before. But before I do that, let's start cursoring over what's in the news, and I'll give you my perspective. One thing that came up a few hours ago on CNN was an earthquake in Afghanistan. So let's listen in to that news.
Welcome to Conga Composer, the dynamic document generation software that allows you to create any business.
Essentially a similar situation again now, where the Afghan medical services are being
rewind.
Full earthquake hit Afghanistan Sunday, killing more than 800 people and injuring more than 1,000. That's according to the Afghan Interior Ministry. The 6.0 magnitude quake hit the country's mountainous eastern region near the Pakistan border. Rescue workers were deployed to the hardest hit areas, but they are struggling to reach remote communities as landslides and destroyed roads hamper their progress. CNN's Nick Robertson is joining us now from London with what more we know on this, what sounds like an absolutely devastating quake, Nick.
Yeah, the reports we're just getting are coming from the Afghan government spokesman, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, the spokesman saying that now they believe more than 800 people have been killed. They're estimating about 2,000 people injured. These are, I think we should stress, preliminary figures that may go up, may be corrected perhaps down, but most likely up as the government gets more information. It is, as you say, remote areas. Some of them are village areas, some of them are up essentially dirt tracks. So very, in the best of times, hard to get there and hard to ascertain the information. The injured are being transported to one of the sort of main regional cities in the east of the country, Jalalabad in Nangarhar province, which is affected. Kunar province is the province that's understood to be the most heavily affected there. Other local hospitals are taking in some of the wounded. And for the Afghan healthcare system that is already stretched economically, that is already stretched in terms of what it can, the facilities it can offer, this is undoubtedly going to stretch their resources possibly beyond life-saving for some of those people being brought in. The construction of houses in that area, in the villages, some of the remote villages, is sometimes rough stonework, often using mud as well. So these are structures, wood structures as well, that can be prone to earthquakes. The last time there was an earthquake of this similar magnitude, it was a 6.3 back in October 2023. 2,000 people died as a result of that earthquake. And we're looking at essentially a similar situation again now, where the Afghan medical services are being stretched, are in need of lifting equipment, are in need of blood supplies. And at the moment, they're looking to the international community or anyone that can help support them in this. There have been a number of aftershocks, the most intense of which was a 5.3, but at the moment, the Afghan authorities really stretched in trying to account for, recover the survivors and account for all the dead.
And Nick, you mentioned that previous earthquake that sounds like it was pretty close to the same magnitude as this one. Did the region ever recover from that one? As to right now, may that have be or may be leading to more damage here?
It's likely that most of the structures that were damaged back in 2023 were either not used again or reconstructed. The structures there are many of them are of, as I was mentioning, poorly made, poorly constructed, because the economy is poor and they're built in remote areas. So I think the 2023 earthquake is probably the after effects of that are probably not going to have a hugely significant impact. A minor impact maybe. Of course, it's in the similar area in the east of the country towards the border with Pakistan. But primarily the problem here is going to be people in their homes when the quake struck, bringing down roughly built houses on the people inside, and local authorities, such as they are, not having heavy lift equipment and certainly not being able to rush it into the area, particularly when homes have been destroyed. There are very, very few tarmac roads in that area for quick medical support to be brought in. However, we understand the Afghan government is using helicopters as well to try to get some of the most badly injured to hospital, to those medical centers, which are, as we understand at the moment, quite frankly, being overwhelmed by the number of casualties they're facing.
And we will see how the humanitarian effort navigates the same issues that first responders are having. Nick Robertson, I know also keen to point out those casualty numbers are preliminary and may be subject to going up. I know you'll stay on top of it, Nick Robertson. Thank you.
Does seem to be a lot of natural disasters popping up in the last few years. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. There's stress on the Earth's crust. And when you couple it with some geopolitical things that are happening, that you have this tension and a boiling over of war and famine and economic disruption. You know, there's this combination of human conflict and natural disaster conflict boiling in the last few years. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I have. All right, I have deodorants that are dual purpose. They're for males and females. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals and we developed these deodorant bars. They're dual purpose. You use it as a deodorant and it'll help to detoxify your body. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. No aluminum, no baking soda, all natural, very high quality. So get a few bars for your household and detoxify your body every day. Super important. Let's talk about detoxifying your body. You can also detoxify your body with zeolite. Zeolite will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Detoxifying your body on a regular basis is really important to improve your immune system and your endocrine system and to get your body in homeostasis. Zeolite, if you take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. If you want a heavier detox, do 10 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, and do that every day until the bottle's done, and do that once or twice a year. But I recommend doing it every day, and also clean your environment. Stay away from processed foods, make sure you drink filtered water, and clean chemicals, cleaning solutions, and other chemicals that you have in your house, in your garage or in your basement, cupboards, closets. If you need them, then put them in a double layer container. If you don't need them, get rid of them. That way you're not being exposed to harmful chemicals. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and detoxify your body with zeolite. Do that every day. And let's talk about the foundation of my protocol. The foundation of the protocol is to take a multivitamin and a probiotic. I have complete multivitamin. The complete multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity. These multivitamins act as cofactors and attach to the enzyme for your cells to work properly, so you have proper cellular metabolism. So take the complete multivitamin. It's easy to digest. Take it every day. Drink it with filtered water. And the other part of the foundation is the MB40 probiotic. This probiotic will help you to improve your gut biome, improve your immune system, allow for better absorption of your nutrients, have better cellular metabolism. Better metabolism has better communication between your gut and your liver, and your gut and your brain. You'll be able to sleep better. You'll get rid of that brain fog. And with good sleep, you're slowing down the aging process. You'll also notice that your skin is better. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the MB40 probiotic and the complete multivitamin. Stack them together as the foundation, and we'll build off of that stack to slow down the aging process and to increase your longevity. And when you do this on a regular basis, you're going to notice many other systems in your body are going to improve. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, what else is transpiring in the news? Let's listen in to the Spectator about the UK. Again, it's important to understand that what is happening in the UK in terms of debt and in terms of societal instability because of illegal immigration is a canary in the coal mine, and it may cause disruption in financial markets. There is a debt overhang in the UK, and they are having problems to unravel the quantitative easing that they've had for many years. That unraveling of quantitative easing is called quantitative tightening. Well, if you quantitatively tighten, if the bank, if the central bank, their central bank is basically the Bank of England, right? So their central bank can't unravel quantitative tightening. Well, many central banks are having this problem, including the Federal Reserve. So in the United States. So you have the Bank of England that wants to do quantitative tightening, but can't because they'll increase the bond yields, and therefore the revolving debt when the government issues bonds will be at a higher rate. They can't afford it. So there's huge new tax policies that are being discussed in the UK, taxing the rich or not taxing the rich, taxing property, not taxing property. They are having a lot of problems, and it could create some sort of systemic risk in financial markets, especially in the bond market. So it's important to pay attention to what is happening in England. Now, on top of the inability to do quantitative tightening because of the economic turmoil that is happening in Britain, there's a high probability that they'll try to continue and escalate the war in Ukraine to prevent this quantitative tightening. If Ukraine and Russia end up having peace, then there's a high probability that the French and the British will start pushing for conflict in the Balkans. So we have to pay attention to what is happening in England in terms of the instability financially and socially that could actually be systemic economically in the United States and cause world disruption, especially if they continue on a war footing in the eastern areas of Europe.
I have never known, in all my time of covering politics, a regime so quickly appear to lose its way and its own MPs talk relatively openly about whether or not the Prime Minister should be replaced. And for that to happen after a year is absolutely staggering. And if he gets that wrong, then May could be a disaster, the budget could be a disaster, and we might have potentially leadership contest in both Labour and the Conservative parties next year.
Hello and welcome to Spectator TV. I'm Michael Simmons and today I'm joined by Tim Shipman and James Kirkup. Now, today is transfer deadline day in the Premier League, but also in Westminster. We've had Darren Jones to the Cabinet Office, James Murray to the Treasury, and Alexander Isak to Liverpool. Now, Tim, is this going to be the reset that Stormer clearly needs?
Well, as a Liverpool fan, I'm rather more interested in the last part of that equation. And changes in number 10 do have a slight whiff as we're in relaunch about 8 of this government after a year and a bit. It feels a bit more like the Championship than the Premier League here. But in order to not torture this analogy any further, look, we all knew there were changes coming in number 10. As I've written before, a lot of people have been in Keir Starmer's ear saying, you know, your government isn't working, and part of the problem is what's going on at the centre. So people like Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and other experienced folk have been saying, you need to change things. What we know about Starmer is that he doesn't really sort of have a sense of how. He's not, you know, while he's run a big organisation before, he's never, you know, been at the top of government. He seemed not really to understand from the time he took over how it actually works. And that has really tied his hands. And, you know, his most able aide, Morgan McSweeney, did not spend the time before the general election planning how to run a government and how to drive things through Whitehall. And he's been learning on the job as well. And what we've got here is an interesting, you know, we've got a Blairite retread in Tim Allen coming back to do communications. James Lyons, experienced journalist and experienced comms guy who handled the NHS during COVID. So he's been in the eye of the storm before. He's moving on. And, you know, there's been a fun fight over who's really running policy. Vidya Alexson now seems to be in charge of that, who's one of Starmer's closer aides. Stuart Ingham, who a lot of people I've been talking to thought, you know, was not really that well suited to running policy in Downing Street, has been kind of usurped in that sense. But he's been now given a job as sort of senior counsellor to the Prime Minister. He's Starmer's longest serving aide, and Starmer clearly couldn't bring himself to sack him. So he's instead moved him sideways into, you know, an undefined post where he could continue to be influential, or he could continue just to be sort of a pointless person in the building. We've all seen these changes before, sort of sideways promotions and all the rest of it. You know, Liz Lloyd, who was supposed to be in charge of delivery, has been moved sideways as well. It's, you know, the proof will be in the pudding. Is any of this going to work? Helen McNamara, the former Deputy Cabinet Secretary, did a report saying we need a new Prime Minister's department. They've not gone for that, but what they have done is try to bring some politics into the centre of government and kind of create this almost by the back door. So the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, Darren Jones, is now becoming the private secretary to the Prime Minister. And I think what that means is they quite like him to tell Chris Wormald, the largely ineffectual Cabinet Secretary, what to do. Now, whether that is actually going to work is anyone's guess. Even people at the top of government are somewhat sceptical of this. One of them said to me, it's interesting that they would put in the coordinating role for the PM one of the cabinet ministers who is least popular with his colleagues. And that's because Darren Jones has been the one saying no to all the budget demands that all these other ministers have made. So look, is this going to solve all of the problems? The short answer is no, because most of those problems originate with Keir Starmer. And there's only so many aides and advisors that you can fire before it becomes blindingly obvious that the PM himself does not have that feral touch for politics that you need as Prime Minister. And, you know, the big question is, if this all doesn't work, what do they do next? You know, when does Rachel Reeves get the heave-ho? When does Morgan McSweeney decide he's had enough? You know, I think people who want to see this country governed better than it has been for the last 15 years would hope that this would make things better. But as someone who's been writing about this for 25 years, you know, James and I have seen a lot of these changes, and they quite often don't come out to a hill of beans.
And James, you've written on Coffee House this morning about your friend James Lyon who's leaving, and you've said that he's going to be a particular loss to the PM. But you also point out in your blog that he'll have soon had 4 comms directors in something like 15 months. So doesn't this just suggest that, you know, whoever's in doing the comms strategy, nothing really seems to change?
Yes, to be completely transparent, James Lyon's recently departed Director of Communications in 10, very dear friend of mine. He may even met Tim Shipman once or twice in his life, I think. So I'm not unbiased in the subject. I'm delighted he's finishing his gap year in government because he's going to play lunch with me now again. Yeah, and Tim's right. I mean, in terms of the global importance of downstream roles, yeah, you can't expect people to be that excited about this stuff. But the way government communicates really matters, and I think that churn of senior communications jobs. If you go back through the list, I think James Lyons, Steph Driver, Matthew Doyle, the new person who presumably is going to be Tim Allen. Go back a bit further than none. Over the years, Keir Starmer has had lots of months ago. Keir Starmer has had lots of people to speak for him and set his message and project his message. And these days, I'm now recovering, lovely back. I've gone 10 years clean now almost. So, I make my living in the far more ethical world of corporate communications. And when we do corporate communications, anyone running the comms for a big organisation has to have, from day one, they have to have a good, strong relationship with the CEO, and they have to sit there and use this is the truth. I don't know these days. Day one, week one, month one, you spend as much time as you can with the senior leadership of an organisation saying, right, okay, tell me your story, tell me what the organisation wants to do, tell me your purpose and your strategy, and I'll go away and develop a communication message based on that. I will project your story. You can't buy a story. You can't hire a great salesman and say, right, tell me what to say. That's not how it works. And if you're trying to basically buy in a story from somebody else, you never land properly. You need what we call the PR trade authenticity. You need to actually know what you're doing and then employ some people who can then explain to the rest of the world what you're doing and why. And that way you take them with you. So whoever ends up becoming the current Prime Minister's communications chief, I think it's probably the official title now on the Prime Minister's current communications chief. Whoever ends up in that role, I think is going to, they may have an uphill job trying to sit down with Keir Starmer and say, right, just tell me in simple words, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And then I'll go and project that message. So that is the challenge that's coming. Good luck to whoever comes after James Lyons.
And Tim, is this the end of transfer deadline day, or is this the start of a wider government bloodbath?
I suspect, look, on the one hand, this looks like a lot of sort of chopping and changing because there's a lot of pressure on the government. They're feeling the pinch from reform. Reform hit 35% in one of the opinion polls in the last few days. It's the reform conference next week. Farage has largely bossed the summer in terms of news, providing news for people paying attention to politics. So they're concerned. They wanted to get this sorted. All the talk of a sort of wider ministerial reshuffle, that seems to be on ice for a little while. But that's potentially pending at some point. They'll try and bring through some of the younger talent, weed out a few of the ministers who are not performing, get people round pegs into round holes. This is all about delivery ultimately. But, it doesn't really kind of make that much difference if the policy is wrong. And, we look around what's happening today, there's a lot of excitement about in Westminster about this. MPs will constantly be wondering when they're going to find out if they get a red box or not. So that's still to come. But you've got an autumn that comes with, you've got a conference coming up at which Starmer has got to try and project some of that story that James has just been talking about in a good way. You're then going to have a budget, which is going to be absolutely crucial moment. Because does Rachel Reeves continue on the path that she's been on, which doesn't appear to be working, and the markets seem to be growing more sceptical, not less, even today. So this doesn't seem to have reassured them that the government's going to be able to deliver growth any better than it was yesterday. And then you're going up to the May elections next year, which could change the entire trajectory of British politics if it goes as badly for Labour and the Tories as we think it might. I doubt it's the last reset, the last change that we see. And as James rightly points out, communicating who and what Keir Starmer is something that Keir Starmer has to play a role in, and he has to do some serious thinking about it between now and his conference speech. Because if he gets that wrong, I think the narrative that he doesn't really know what he's there to try and do will increase. And I've covered a lot of governments, different regimes, different parties, and we've all seen these moments, these desperate relaunches, these attempts to reset the narrative to show that you're fresh and you've still got some life in you. They normally happen well into a parliament or well into a government, 6-7 years in. This is happening after 1 year of Keir Starmer. And I have never known, in all my time of covering politics, a regime so quickly appear to lose its way and its own MPs talk relatively openly about whether or not the Prime Minister should be replaced. And for that to happen after a year is absolutely staggering, to be honest. So I suspect he's got a big opportunity in October.
And another kind of interesting perspective here is that the more political disruption or tumult that's happening in England and in France will buy time for quantitative tightening. All right, because if the economy is in tumult, if the government is unstable, then the central banks are going to go, okay, we're going to hold off on the quantitative tightening and keep interest rates lower for longer, or at least at its current elevated levels, let's put it that way. And that way we're kicking the can down the road and preventing this titration of these assets on the balance sheet. Now, a lot of people maybe don't really fully understand why I'm concerned about this. If the central bank is selling the assets that are on their balance sheet that they accumulated during COVID and during Lehman crisis, if they keep them on their balance sheet, then what will happen is that there is too much stimulus in the economy. There's too much money in the economy sloshing around. So equity prices go up, bond vigilantes start to bid up the bonds, that bid up the yields of the bond. And what happens is that governments have to do rollover of their debt, and they're issuing debt, new debt, and rollover debt at higher interest rates. So that's if the central bank starts to sell these assets, there's going to be more of these assets in the market. And what's going to happen is that interest rates will actually go up because the yields of these bonds are going to be going up. The yield curve is going to shift upward, not downward, because there's a fixed demand. There's more of these assets in the market because the central bank sold them into the market, pulled out money. So they're strengthening the currency through this operation, but interest rates actually for the yield curve actually went up because there's more assets in the market relative to demand. If the demand was high and it was able to soak it up, it would be a wash. But if the demand is low, then the interest rates are going to go up and the governments are going to be issuing debt at a higher rate, right? So you have to pay attention to this quantitative tightening, the unraveling of all the stimulus that came from Lehman and from COVID. So if you create instability in the markets and create instability at the political level, it gives enough time to prevent or delays, let's put it that way. It delays the actual quantitative tightening. But you can't keep on doing this because they keep on revolving the debt, and the interest rates are going up, the taxes are going up. There's a debt cliff that's happening in the UK, right? So if they don't cut social programs, they're literally going to have to default on their debt. I see an increasing probability of defaulting on their debt. Now, when they do, or if they default on their debt, you're most likely seeing France doing it too. Maybe the United States does. Maybe. It's a lower probability, but it could happen. But if France and the UK default on their debt, it's going to affect the bond markets and expectation of inflation in the Western powers. This is a big problem. That's why it's so important to pay attention. But if you create instability in the market, it's going to prevent the Federal Reserve or the central banks to want to unravel their quantitative tightening. Unravel that balance sheet. The way I should say this is unravel their balance sheet through quantitative tightening. All right. So if there's tumult, it delays that process. And so it's almost as if it's run by incompetent people, but it's run by incompetent people on purpose to prevent the quantitative tightening.
Late September, early October to try and tell people what he's about and sell that in. And if he gets that wrong, then May could be a disaster, the budget could be a disaster, and we might have potentially leadership contest in both Labour and the Conservative parties next year.
We're obviously focusing a lot on cons here, but in the run up to conference that you mentioned, and also the budget that's been suggested maybe on or around the 12th of November, are we going to see a change in policy direction at all? Or is this just about clarifying the message, getting the message across?
Well, all the sort of floated briefings that we've seen from Treasury World over the summer, where they often will pump out ideas to see which ones are viewed as the most disastrous or the least disastrous, have been about various forms of tax rises. Now, most people I speak to at the sort of realist end of the Labour Party, let's put it like that, and who have any kind of connection with the city, say that unless Rachel Reeves stands up and says, I'm totally sorry, this isn't working, we actually can't afford to spend all this money on all these things we're spending our money on now. The world has changed a little bit since we were last in government. Unless she stands up and says that and causes some kind of reckoning with her backbenchers, then it seems to me the markets are only going to get more and more sceptical. Because if things don't turn around, if your policy is always just to come for more tax rises, that isn't going to change the economic trajectory. It isn't going to change the view that the markets have of this government.
And James, just to finish us off on that point about markets, regular listeners and readers of The Spectator know that you and I are a bit obsessed with the gilt yields, and the 10-year this morning is now something like 50 basis points separated from America's. The 30-year is way out of the sort of G7 range as well. And we're sort of quick in the lobby anyway to suggest that a lot of this is, just down to the market saying we don't like this reshuffle. It's not given us confidence. But is there more going on internationally?
Yeah, we mustn't ignore the fact that there is some stuff going on in the US, which is seriously undermining investor confidence in US economic policy, the Fed, US economic statistics, which is long-term negative treasuries, and there's still a loose tie between treasuries and gilts. So it's not just that's not gratuitous here. It would be nice to think that trillions of pounds of national markets were hanging on the fate of Downing Street special advisors. But there is a connection between who works in Downing Street and the gilt markets, and whether or not Britain gets paid its bills, and whether or not we end up tipping over a cliff of IMF bailout. And the connection is that, as Tim says, unless this government can put together an economic strategy, an economic message, and sell it at the budget, which ultimately the Labour Party can get behind, then this government will not command market confidence. And I think the connection, Tim mentioned Liz Lloyd, where it was Blair involved in the welfare reform vote in summer. Now that was a huge moment in the history of this government. The fact that the Labour Party, the PLP, wasn't prepared to countenance what were probably pretty modest cuts in welfare spending in a rising welfare bill.
Yeah, they weren't even cuts. It was just, let's go up a bit slower.
Exactly. Yes. Modest slowing welfare bill, which is for social reasons, which painted into this corner because the markets demand, some sort of fiscal consolidation to make sure that we go on getting the borrowing we need to stay afloat. So we kind of box in where all that's left is tax cuts. You go through the things you use for tax cuts, tax rises. All that's left is tax rises. And if you go through the things that they can't raise taxes on because promises in politics, you can't do income, you can't do VAT, that's poison, you can't do businesses are already going with war with national insurance. And so you end up, by process of elimination, with some sort of wealth or assets tax. There are people, and this is the great, I think we'll see what the Pope said tomorrow. I suspect that Andrew Reshuffle will end up being written up as a Milibandite takeover. This Milibandism appears to be back in fashion in number 10. There is a sort of preconceived Milibandite sort of ideological interest in taxing wealth and assets. I'm going to say, as a former think tank director, I think it's actually a rational thing to do. I'm kind of a toss and bell on this one, really. I think there is a good case for eventually taxing wealth and assets more than we do at the moment, and taxing income less. But politically, that's incredibly difficult. And that basically boils down to, we're going to put a tax on your house. We're going to put inheritance tax up. We're going to tax your savings. I mean, this stuff is poison. Absolute hemlock. Only you need to be an absolute political genius of Blairite level to try and sell this stuff. And that is ultimately the challenge that is coming for this government, because that's where the markets are going to force them to go at the budget. I mean, we always talk about budgets as being key moments, big event. This one, really massive event in the history of this government, and the state of politics in the UK.
And world exclusive, Keir Starmer is not a political genius.
On that bombshell, thanks Tim, thanks James, and thank you for listening.
Big problem. It's a canary in the coal mine. France has something similar that we're going to take a look at. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in charcoal tea tree or lemongrass. You can also get it in peppermint and in lavender. So get a few bars for your household. Help support the work that I do. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. I also have structural nano silver toothpaste, very high quality. get a few of these toothpaste for your home. It has no fluoride. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce gum inflammation, and help with the gum health. Very important. Very high quality structural nano silver toothpaste. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the toothpaste. You can't purchase anything better. There's nothing out there that's better than what I have on my store. Magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc are super important for your immune system, to boost up that immune system. You're going to need that for the fall and the winter season. Trust me, something is coming. Better be prepared. And magnesium and zinc, that just helps with the immune system, but the magnesium helps with your brain function. And you're going to notice within 5 years, many people in your circle, especially if you're 40 years of age or older, within 5 years, many people that you know will start having cognitive decline and motor coordination issues, maybe even Parkinsonian tremors. Neurological problems are going to be more prevalent in 5 years. So you better start paying attention, better start protecting your neurons, boosting up that health of cognitive function and neural health. If you listen to what I have to say, I'm telling you how to mitigate the issues. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen in on Macron's struggles. This is Times Rating.
Find the perfect mattress for your best sleep during the Labor Day mattress sale at Raymore Flanagan.
Hey, Doc, if you had to choose, would you give yourself a root canal or run payroll?
Oh, run payroll.
Huh?
Paying my team with gusto takes just a few clicks. They automatically file.
It's a very fragmented parliament, so how to find a prime minister, someone who can assemble some sort of stable majority is extremely challenging. But all of this stems from the fundamental mistake that Macron made essentially a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, back in 2024 when he called the snap election, which resulted in this parliament that we are now struggling with.
The Labour government hopes its warming relationship with its near European neighbours will reap political benefits. It has high hopes that the one-in, one-out migrant agreement with France will start to pay dividends, and there are signs of a food deal with the EU that could lower the price of cheese and fine wine. But political chaos over the Channel is putting that at risk, with the French government set to collapse in just 7 days in a vote of no confidence that the current administration is highly unlikely to win. Well, Francois Joseph Chichan is a former French diplomat and political consultant at Flint Global and joins us to decipher what's going on. Good morning.
Good morning.
So for people who have not really engaged in this story, it sounds like a bit of a slow motion car crash, because there is going to be a vote of no confidence and the chances are the government will lose it.
Yes, it's now very, very likely that the Prime Minister is going to lose that vote. And actually all of the discussions happening now in Paris in political circles all about what happens next. And basically what's going to happen is that the ball is going to be back in Macron's court, and you will have to decide whether to appoint a new Prime Minister to try to find some sort of alternative majority to run the government, or to call for fresh elections. And my guess is that it's going to be very difficult to call for fresh elections, because that would essentially mean that the centrist party, his party, Macron's party, that he founded back in 2016, 2017.
Remember, what are the common features between the UK and France? The common features are they're heavily in debt. The central banks can't unwind their balance sheet through quantitative tightening. Their governments are in turmoil, and both of them are very forceful in terms of fighting Russia and Ukraine.
Is going to lose even more ground. So I think the president is going to try to find a new prime minister. It's very important for him because the prime minister in France is in charge of delivering the president's domestic agenda, and first and foremost the budget. And the situation in France in terms of debt, public deficit, is extremely serious, and so there is a need for a stable government to try to deliver some solutions on that front. But in the current setup of the current parliament, it's going to be extremely challenging.
So what is the likely outcome here? Because, I mean, that sounds, finding a new prime minister doesn't sound like an easy thing to do quickly.
No, exactly. It might take.
In Carl Place, New York, just minutes from Roosevelt Field Mall, is a one-of-a-kind showroom specializing in furniture for babies.
No, exactly. It might take some time, and actually Macron is known for taking a lot of time to appoint his prime minister or his government. So the risk is that everything is delayed, including the presentation of the budget for next year, and that this takes much more time than it should. And also, given the current setup of the parliament, there is no clear majority. It's a very fragmented parliament. So how to find a prime minister, someone who can assemble some sort of stable majority is extremely challenging. But all of this stems from the fundamental mistakes that Macron made essentially a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, back in 2024 when he called the snap election, which resulted in this parliament that we are now struggling with. So he's going to struggle to form a government and to appoint the prime minister. And if he can't do that, then the only solution that will be there for him will be to go to elections.
And is that what people really want to see? Because my understanding is that the far right are benefiting quite a lot in this situation. There is a bit of a rumbling, a question about whether that would be the best outcome here.
Yes, exactly. It's a lot of the mainstream political parties, I would say, are extremely reluctant to go to election because they know they will be wiped out, and that's the far right and the far left, by the way, would make some strong inroads. So that's a conundrum. Working with the current parliament in a situation where it's going to be very difficult to find a majority to pass a budget, or go to election with a risk of an even more fragmented parliament, or potentially a majority of political parties which are from extreme political parties, either on the left or on the right. So that's the current sort of conundrum which the president is facing.
It's such a turbulent time. I mean, I hate to ask the question from our perspective, but obviously most of our listeners are here in the UK. France is absolutely key to a part of the government's plan to reduce illegal crossings into the UK, this one-in, one-out agreement. Will that hold? Will that sustain whatever happens politically next in France?
So I think most of it will hold in terms of the commitments that have been taken. For example, last month there was a summit between Prime Minister Starmer and President Macron on all of these issues, including migration and small boats and all of that. So I suspect this is going to continue because in France there is actually quite a strong consensus on the necessity to do something about these issues as well. In terms of immigration, so I suspect any government that emerges from the current chaos will have a strong element in terms of immigration policy, and that includes cooperation with the UK. But this has its limits because people on the French side of the channel are also, but that is not new, that is not linked to the current political situation. Most of the political parties, most of the political responsible consider that it's first and foremost the responsibility of the UK to deal with that issue because the pull factor of illegal migration comes from the UK. So that is not going to change, but the cooperation that has been put in place last month is going to continue, I suspect. You have to remember one thing as well is that in France, the president is in charge of foreign policy, of European policy. And that means that he retains quite a lot of power there. So whatever commitments he has taken in that field is likely to be continuously implemented. The problem is with this political chaos is really with the domestic policy, for example, the budget or specific bills that the president would want to pass internally. But externally, the president retains quite a lot of authority to implement the commitments that he made.
And just on that, finally, you mentioned the rise of the far right and the left at this moment in French politics. Is the perception there that actually a deal with the UK is not a good one for France? Is there a chance that they would be arguing that this deal should not continue?
I think there will be questions about it, particularly because the deal is perceived as the northern region of France as putting too much pressure based on northern population. And you have to remember that Marine Le Pen, so the leader of the National Rally, the far right party, is elected from that region. So she will have a particular interest in what's going on with the UK in terms of migration policy. But overall, again, I think there is a consensus. The debate has moved forward really, really fast and quite far on both sides of the channel when it comes to immigration, I think. So the consensus is that something needs to be done. And then I think the opposition of some people, for example, in France, in terms of the deal, will be more on the nitty-gritty of the details, rather than the overall picture and the overall objective.
Francois Shushan, thank you so much for giving us the insight there into what's going on in France and how it will affect politics here in the UK, especially as we mentioned earlier, that Yvette Cooper is going to be giving a statement in the House of Commons later on today. You will remember that the government has already, they have chosen a number of migrants who are going to be part of this one-in, one-out deal. We're expecting to see some movement on that in the coming weeks. So anything that goes on in France would have a real impact here in the UK. It's something we'll keep an eye on, definitely.
How long before I see results with that sheet?
Day 3, you'll feel your energy. Day 7, your eyes will change. Day 28, you will become unrecognizable.
3 reasons to start Tai Chi.
That's just an AI advertisement. Have you noticed that AI advertisements are starting to pop up all over the place? Before we go to the next video, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and let's take a look at some of the other great supplement stacks that I have. To help with your neural health, get NAD+. NAD+ will boost up energy levels. NAD+ helps to repair DNA damage, including your neurons. And NAD+ helps to protect neurons. Super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can get. You can't get anything better than what I have in my hand here. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the ubiquinol. It'll soak up free radicals, help with the health of the mitochondria, boost up your energy levels, your ATP will increase, and ubiquinol will help to protect neurons. Stack them together. This also stacks well with C60, Clarity Factor, resveratrol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the ubiquinol and NAD+. And also, great way to boost up your immune system. You're going to need that. Why? Because something's going to happen in in the fall and in the winter. So from September on to about February, you better be prepared. Boost up that immune system. You're getting warned. I'm telling you. All right. Lignans. Lignans is going to soak up free radicals. It's going to bring down inflammation. Right? And it's going to help with your immune system and your endocrine system. You stack it with turmeric. Turmeric will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, helps with the immune system and cardiovascular system. And ashwagandha root will help to bring down cortisol levels and bring down your blood glucose levels, bring down that inflammation, especially at the vascular level. When you bring down inflammation, you're helping your vascular system and your immune system. Stack them together. Ashwagandha root, turmeric, and the lignans. That's a very powerful stack to help with your immune system and to help with your cardiovascular system. By bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. So please go to my store and get these great stacks. Take them every day and get healthy. You can do this. Now, it's really important to prepare for the emergence of an increased number of cases in the fall and in the winter. I can't say certain words. That's the reason why I seem so coy with this, because I don't want strikes. Right? So I'm telling you what to do to improve your immune system for the fall and the winter. Pay attention because it's coming. Okay, let's listen in on Sky News about Bolton, deep state Bolton.
My mother and my grandmother and my great grandmother, my aunts as far back as I can remember, have always been nurses. There's something very meaningful.
All eyes on Shanghai at the moment, and in previous instances, this has been referred to as the League of Authoritarian Gentlemen or a Dictators Club, but it's somewhat upended now, isn't it, when you see people like Narendra Modi attending too? What do you make of his attendance?
Well, there's a lot of bad news here, very little good news. The West has spent decades, US in particular, trying to wean India away from its Cold War attachment to Soviet Union, Russia, buying sophisticated weapons from them, and cautioning India on the danger posed by China. This is symbolized by what's called the Asian Security Quad: Japan, India, Australia, and the United States. A lot of effort to make India more amenable to cooperation with these countries. Donald Trump in the past weeks has essentially upended that, and for a variety of reasons, now sent India back toward Russia to grow closer to China, and just shredding these decades of efforts to try and change that alignment. I'm not saying this can't be fixed, but it's going to take a lot of work, and I don't see it starting anytime soon.
6 months ago, we would have talked about the bromance between Donald Trump and Narendra Modi of India, and then in Trump's attempt to try and bring some leverage against Putin of Russia in respect to the situation in Ukraine, 50% tariffs on India. And are we saying, therefore, from your perspective, that India has been driven in this direction as much as it's decided to go in this direction?
Well, I think that's right. It's a series of things that Trump has done that have offended the Indians. On the basic tariffs that Trump wants, which I think as a macro level economic phenomena are a disaster for everybody, but the Indians thought they were in close negotiations to solve this, as Britain did with Trump, and Trump just dismissed it and set 25% tariffs. Then carrying through, as you mentioned, on his threat to either tariff Russia or impose secondary tariffs on countries buying Russian oil and gas, Trump whacked India with another 25%, did not tariff Russia, did not tariff China, the largest purchaser of Russian oil and gas, and then to make it worse, when the recent escalation between Pakistan and India over a terrorist attack in Kashmir occurred, it escalated, then came back down. Trump took full credit for it as one of the 6 or 7 wars that he stopped this year to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize, which has made India incandescent.
This organization brings together a huge swathe of the world. It's kind of a 40% or so of the global population, huge element of the Eurasian landmass, something like 23% of global GDP. And I'm just looking at some of the comments being made by Xi Jinping, and he says that the world should seek integration, not decoupling, have an inclusive economic globalization, and that there should be a community of common security across the region. This feels like a massive potential reset that the West would really struggle to counter.
Well, this is largely a propaganda show, but it demonstrates
there's a reality behind it.
China's hegemonic ambitions in East and Southeast Asia, Central Asia, the former republics of the Soviet Union, again, all of which the US, Japan, Australia, many in Europe have been trying to prevent from happening. But Donald Trump's tariff policies, his unwillingness to consider even beneficial diplomatic moves in a larger strategic context have given Xi Jinping and the Chinese an opportunity. Whether they can exploit it or not remains to be seen.
Where does this leave us with the situation in Ukraine and peace? Because 2 weeks ago, 15th of August, on the Friday, we're focusing on Alaska, Putin and Trump in the presidential car and the Beast driving away from their aircraft. There was all the talk of security guarantees, Steve Witkoff coming and making big declarations following. That feels like a very far cry away now. How does the US and the West respond to what it's seeing and try and bring about that goal of some degree of peace in Ukraine?
Well, I think the whole thing is collapsing. I think the chances for peace in Ukraine are probably worse now than they were before the Alaska summit. Putin has gotten away literally with murder. Whatever he said to Trump in Alaska, he's simply ignoring with increased attacks on civilian targets in Ukraine, no diminution in Russia's military effort, no concessions, whatever. This speech of his at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization you just quoted, that the real fundamental cause of his invasion of Ukraine was NATO,
is something that's the basis for him now to try and restructure NATO. That's what he really wants, as well as possession of Ukraine. No change whatever in Russia's position.
Why do you say the situation is worse now than before that summer?
Well, I think as hard as it is to predict what Trump will do, I think he will just disengage. He's got a moral equivalence between Russia and Ukraine for who started the war and how it's conducted. I'm very much worried he will now simply back away, maybe continue to sell arms to European countries that can be transmitted to Ukraine. But in terms of any effort to help Ukraine defend itself against this unprovoked Russian aggression, I don't see it.
What should the US do?
Well, what we should have done 3.5 years ago, frankly, was develop a strategy with NATO actually to achieve what NATO's stated goal is, which is the full restoration of Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity, which we didn't do for 3 years under the Biden administration. It's much more difficult now. But I think that's the only acceptable outcome. Otherwise, Russia, China, and other potential aggressor nations will draw the conclusion that you can get away with aggression.
Has Trump been
across industries? Digital transformation is accelerating like never before. Imprivata's innovative access management solutions give users what they need. Fast, seamless access controls. Imprivata.
Has Trump been humiliated to some degree in this situation by Putin?
Well, I think he has been. I don't think he realizes it, but I think Putin believes that the old magic is back, that his KGB training has allowed him again to pull the wool over Trump's eyes. It's working out very well for the Kremlin.
What about, you reference European countries there, NATO countries? You know, last night, for example, the UK agrees to supply and Norway agrees to buy as well, British frigates, for example. What can countries such as the UK do in situations such as this? How much leverage is there in reality?
Well, I think to support the commitment we've all made to Ukraine, the continuation of arms shipment and really developing a strategy to prevent further erosion of Ukrainian control in the face of this continuing Russian onslaught is just critical. And if the Trump administration isn't willing to provide it, I think England, which was a leader in aiding Ukraine right from the day of the invasion in 2022, could well take the leading role.
And in a sense of leadership, Sir Keir Starmer has allied with Emmanuel Macron of France to head up the coalition of the willing, as they're calling it, that may play some role in security guarantees if that world was to ever come about. What do you make of those offerings to try and bring about peace in that perspective?
Well, I don't think the security guarantees mean that much, actually. I think what Putin has here is a long-range strategy to take control of Ukraine. This is part of his goal to recreate the Russian Empire. He's been very clear on that in public statements for 20 years. So despite the enormous human cost to the Russians and to the Ukrainians, he's only roughly doubled Russian control of Ukrainian territory from the first assault in 2014. I think any pause in the fighting is just the preliminary so that Russia can rebuild and restock its army and get ready for the third offensive.
It always strikes me there's a challenge for Western democracies. 4-year cycles in the United States. In the UK, 4 to 5 year cycles. Russia, Putin's been there since 2000, 25 years. You know, look at Xi Jinping, he's set himself up for life as well. These authoritarian figures have the benefit of time, do they not? That they afford themselves the benefit of time. And the variable consistency from the West is a challenge for the West because we're changing tack, if not on a 4-yearly basis, often even faster than that.
Well, we actually did pretty well through the Cold War, which was a long struggle from 1945 roughly to 1989. I think we can do it again, but I think it requires, honestly, the leadership of the United States, and I don't see that for the next 3.5 years.
To what degree should we think about any limitations that President Putin has? And I think, for example, the economy is suffering. His long-term ally, which he...
Isn't it very interesting that Bolton, after the FBI raid, goes on Sky News and not other news networks in the United States? Now, maybe he has, and I haven't seen it, but it's rare when I see him on Sky News. But then all of a sudden he pops up his head after the FBI raid and he's on Sky News. I don't know, it's a little odd.
billions of dollars of support into, or rubles of support into Bashar al-Assad falls, and all Russia really does is allow the plane to land in Moscow. You know, Moscow and Tehran sign a security agreement, but then Israel bombs Iran widely with US support, and Russia doesn't do anything there either. Is there limitations to Moscow? And if so, to what degree can they be leveraged?
Well, I think there are limitations, but I think the graver danger is the axis that's being formed right now between China and Russia. It may look like the Sino-Soviet alliance of the Cold War, but this time China is clearly the dominant partner. I think it has grave threats implicit in it for Russia itself. But in the meantime, this is how this Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, and by the way, the big parade on Wednesday where the Chinese communist version of how they beat Japan in World War II will be displayed, shows really long-term thinking on Xi Jinping's part. So he's happy to bring Russia closer to him in the long term, very, very beneficial to China.
And that parade, a historic attendance, first time since 1959, I think, of a North Korean leader going to that parade. History being made there. A different kind of history being made here later this autumn. Donald Trump coming for a second state visit, unprecedented. You would have seen that moment that Sir Keir Starmer flourishes the letter from the King. What would, if you were sat in a room with either the King or with Sir Keir, what would your advice be to dealing with Trump, having spent so much time with him one-on-one?
Well, flattery is always good. Refer to the Gulf of America, formerly the Gulf of Mexico. Think of things like that. I give Starmer credit for deploying the state visit invitation when he first met with Trump. He may want to deploy it 2 or 3 more times during Trump's term. It may be an annual thing. Trump loves it when the Queen gave the state dinner in Buckingham Palace in the first Trump state visit. Really, I thought he would have stayed all night if he could have.
You could see a world where it would be beneficial for, you know, it's often touted the special relationship to have the president over on an annual basis to really cement that.
Well, for Donald Trump, I think other presidents would be more understanding.
Fair enough, fair enough. Your own relations with the president crumbled somewhat, I think it's fair to say, since 2019, since you worked for him. What is your kind of stance there now in 2025?
Well, I think many of the policies Trump is pursuing are detrimental to the country, not just internationally, but domestically as well. We just had a situation where Trump has taken the U.S. government to have a 10% stake in Intel, a major information technology company. Congress has been on its summer recess. I only saw a comment from one senator on that the decision of partial U.S. ownership of a free enterprise company. Is Bernie Sanders, the socialist independent who caucuses with Democrats from Vermont, who thought it was a great idea. This is just simply not Republican Party philosophy at work.
It was an unusual situation in recent days where he said that he knew the feeling. You both have had the FBI at your doors for different reasons. Investigations are ongoing. What was that moment like on a personal level?
Well, I've had more fun, let's put it that way. There's a lot I could say on that subject. I wish I could. Unfortunately, now's not the time or place.
No, I appreciate that. And how long are you in London for, John?
Well, just a short time to speak to the Brewers Group this evening and have some meetings.
Well, good to have you with us. Thank you for sharing your time with us. So thank you. John Bolton there.
Interesting. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the nattokinase. Nattokinase will break up clots because it's fibrinolytic, and it will help your lipid profile. Vitamin K2, MK7 molecule will help to increase your bone density, especially when you take in calcium and do resistance training. Stacking with D3. D3 is dual purpose. It will help with gene expression because it's a gene expression cofactor. D3 will help to get cells into apoptosis, especially if they're infected. You're going to need this in the fall and the winter and also D3 helps absorb calcium. And when you're doing resistance training, it's going to stack well with the K2 and build denser bone. And it also helps with cardiovascular because it's going to reduce the chances of calcium depositing around plaque formation. So a great stack, D3, K2, dual purpose, helps with cardiovascular health and bone density. nattokinase, stack it together and supercharge the cardiovascular part of the stack. I also have myotrol. Myotrol will help with gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle. Super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. It's for males or females. It has flavonoids, polyphenols, and lignans to help with that gene expression. Myotrol will also help with the health of the mitochondria. Do resistance training, take myotrol. It stacks well with gladiator barley. An olive leaf extract brings down inflammation. That's important for your immune system and your cardiovascular system, and it'll help with your lipid profile. So it's a dual purpose. By stacking it with the myotrol, you're helping with your musculature, and you are boosting up that immune system and helping with the cardiovascular system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's go to a video talking about German conscription on the horizon. So remember, debt is increasing in the developed nations in Europe. The UK, France, and Germany. They're all three moving more towards a war footing against Russia. They all have problems with the debt cliff, with a doom loop, and they can't afford their bond market yields to continue to go up. We are seeing Cold War 2.0 moving into a hot war. It's probably already in a hot war.
Chancellor Merz and his cabinet have approved plans to boost recruitment for the German armed forces, the Bundeswehr. The aim is to expand the military in case of aggression from Russia. NATO estimates that Germany would need armed forces of more than 250,000 to withstand a Russian attack. Current troop numbers are well short of that. So here's what the cabinet's approved. From 2026, all 18-year-old Germans will be sent an online questionnaire asking if they're interested in joining the military. Completing the form would be compulsory for men and voluntary for women. After that, the Bundeswehr would invite suitable candidates to come forward for basic training. If the recruitment drive doesn't work, then conscription could be reintroduced for the first time since 2011. Parliament would need to approve the plan before it comes into force. The question of whether Germany could, or indeed should, force young people to potentially put themselves in harm's way has been hotly debated. Here's Defence Minister Boris Pistorius.
Unlike before, each and every member of the young generation will have to think about the question, what can I and what do I want to contribute to the security of the country in which I live? Do I care? Do I want to take responsibility, and in what way? Not only do we need a well-equipped military force, we've been working on that for the past 2.5 years, we also need a fully staffed military. Only then will we have a truly credible deterrence to counter Russia.
Patrick Zensberg is president of the German Armed Forces Reservist Association. He's also a former member of Parliament for the Christian Democrats. Welcome to DW. Back in 2011, when you were a member of Parliament, you were the only member of your party, the Christian Democrats, to vote against suspending compulsory military service. And you warned then that getting rid of it was a mistake. So do you now think you've been proved right?
I think so, because at that time, we destroyed a lot of structures. We stopped the conscription, we stopped using all the structures, we destroyed the structures nearly, and we said we are surrounded by friends, we can just see peace on the horizon, we don't need such a huge military anymore, and we shrink the army a lot, and now we see that we need the structures back, we need the size of the military back. Yes, it was a mistake 2011 to suspend it.
Do you think, though, that even if Germany still had that, would Germany's armed forces still be up to the task? Would there still be the manpower to fulfill its NATO obligations?
Yeah, we would be much larger. And we still benefit from the past because we have lots of reservists that go back to the old time of conscription. We have a lot of benefits because we have knowledge for a lot of people in the civil society. Yes. So we have it, and we have still the people. As reservists, we have a civil society that is resilient, more resilient than countries who never had it.
Right. And should this, I mean, it's important to remember for non-Germans that it's actually still in the Constitution. So this was a suspension. Conscription is in the Constitution. So this was a suspension. Should it apply to women as well?
So it is still in the Constitution, just for men. It was suspended by a simple act by the majority of the members of the parliament. So it can be activated again by a simple majority of the members of the parliament, but just for men. The Constitution speaks just man has the obligation. So if we want men and women to have the obligation to do a military service, we have to change the Constitution, and there we need a high majority.
And do you think that women should also have this obligation imposed on them?
My personal opinion is yes, and I would suggest we should have a broad discussion in the society. I would ask the people of our country, should women do the service too or not? I would give the question back to the society, and then we have a broad discussion in the society, and that's important for such a mandatory service.
The government's plan is initially voluntary military service to strengthen armed service numbers. Do you think that will be sufficient to cover the gap?
We're doing a first step. We are sending a questionnaire to a whole year of young people. Man has to answer. Women can, but don't have to. So we expect around about 5,000 young people joining the military additionally because of this question. 5,000.
Right.
The gap now, 2025, after the NATO summit in the summer, is 80,000. We're having 180,000 soldiers. We need 260,000. So 5,000 per year would not fill the gap, from my opinion.
Okay, so you think that compulsory conscription is going to come?
Yes, I think so. And there's a second important issue with it. We need a society, we need a civil society that can fight if it's needed to defend the country, and we don't create reservists without such a service.
Young people, though,
use Kayak's Explore tool to see just how far your budget can take you. Reykjavik, spectacular. Then do what people do. Forget about Reykjavik for a while. 10 Reader's Foods, Icelandic sheep's head jelly. Oh yeah, Reykjavik. Back to Kayak for a great deal.
Such a service.
Young people, though, are already having a hard time. They're having a hard time finding a job, dealing with skyrocketing costs of living and high rents. Now they're being asked, or maybe even told, to take time out and serve in the military. How is that a good deal for them?
I think it's also a chance. First thing is, the former generation already did it. And now we're asking the young generation to do the service too, and we should not talk about if, we should talk about how we create the service, if it's a benefit. If you can learn, for example, from modules for later education, if you can collect ECTS points for studies that will follow afterwards. So the question for me is that can we create a service that's not just a benefit for the country, that is a benefit for young people?
That would be yourself. This is not just a duty, it's also an opportunity.
Yes, I think so.
So when you, let me just press you on this. So now young people are having a hard time. In the future, young people are going to be having a hard time. The country has a failing pension system, rising health insurance contributions because of increasing numbers of older people like me, and I dare say you. It does seem like this is just another example of older generations screwing over the young.
I think all generations had hard times. Remember the generation after the Second World War. Remember the generations in the 70s. Remember generations where we had higher numbers of unemployed people. So now a new generation will take over all the duties and also all responsibility. Also, for example, to secure peace. It's in their hands. And I think such a service is important to secure peace for the country, also in next generations.
So before the gap between the voluntary, we see how the voluntary goes, and then, okay, we're not getting enough numbers. We now need to talk about compulsory. The national conversation that needs to happen before you take that step. How do you think that's going to go down? How do you think that young people in 2026, 27 are going to look at are going to view the idea of forced military service?
I think so, not very different than younger people in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, when already young people had to do the service. The question is,
well, how was that? Because we all weren't hit. Well, certainly on this side of the table, we weren't here. So how was that conversation then?
I think a lot of young ones didn't want to go there. They had to go, and then in each family, we had discussions about how was the week, how was the military. Everybody in Germany talked about military because one in the family was in the military. Right. So it is also a control of the society above the military. So in the end, I think not a lot of people loved it, but everybody did it. And in the end, most of the society accepted it as something that created a common feeling of the society, that created a feeling of being together, and young people learned something. It was not loved, but it was not hated.
Okay, thanks for talking.
That would be my description.
Thank you for talking us through that so clearly. Patrick Sensberg, President of the German Armed Forces Reservists Association.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Times Radio. They were talking about the health concerns of Donald Trump. Is he healthy? Is he not? I mean, I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised that he has cardiovascular disease because of the fast food that he eats. He's definitely overweight, but he seems to be relatively healthy. But he did have that issue with the hand. Well, what exactly is going on with that? I don't know. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor will get rid of that brain fog. They'll help you to consolidate memory. And by taking it every day, you're going to be able to concentrate on tasks. And over time, you're going to be able to improve the dendritic connections. So different neurons will connect together and allow for increased cognition, faster thinking, faster recall. Really important to take every day, and drink it with filtered water. And take Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. Take it every night. So you're in those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. So you're consolidating memory, detoxifying your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. By having a good sleep regularly, you're bringing down your cortisol levels, which is really important to help with your immune system. You will also improve your memory. You're going to be slowing down the aging process. Now, if you are sleep deprived chronically, you're increasing your chances of early onset of dementia. Do you want that? No. Now, a great stack, neurostack, would be to take the Goodnight Formula and the Clarity Factor. You take the Goodnight Formula at night, you take the Clarity Factor in the morning or mid-afternoon, and do that every day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. You can also stack it with NAD+, ubiquinol, resveratrol, and C60. Very powerful neurostats. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And we're going into the season where you might get throat irritation. And it's really important that you are prepared for that fall and winter season. Super important, all right? I keep on saying this. You got to read in between the lines, pay attention, be prepared, make sure you get the lozenges and the drops. The moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away. Elderberry zinc lozenges, they're structural nanosilver. It's a 60 parts per million in concentration. And get the drops. You can get it in honey and lemon, or you can get it in cherry flavor, or in blueberry. But it's important to have a few bags at home or at work. Make sure you take them right away, right when you have that throat irritation. Because in the fall, in the winter season of this year, I think many people are going to have throat irritations. And it's really important to mitigate it right away. I can't tell you how important it is for you to pay attention to me on this. So please go to my store and get the lozenges and the drops. All right, let's listen in on Trump's health rumors.
With the right partner to help make your data AI ready, you can unlock value and potential. HPE.
One example of building resilience in the supply chain using this partnership was leveraging Merck's global net.
We obviously know all about his fast food fandom, how he loves the McDonald's and the Diet Cokes. We know that he doesn't do any exercise because he's written about it in one of his books where he said that his philosophy is that, you know, you have a certain amount of energy, and if you do any exercise, then you lose your energy, so it's not very good for you. Donald Trump is alive, contrary to rumours that spread online over the weekend, because in fairness, it was unusual. He hadn't been seen in public for a couple of days. Now, thousands of posts were shared across the social media platform X. There were hashtags, "Where is Trump?" and "Trump died." But just a couple of hours later, pictures emerged of the US president, very much still with us, arriving at the golf club. Harriet Alexander is a journalist in New York and joins us now. Hello, Harriet. Hello. Now, Biden disappeared from the public eye for days when he was president, and we didn't say much because he wasn't so front and center of all our lives. But there is no doubt that Trump makes himself so visible. So when he disappears for a while, people are going to talk, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, actually, one of the most powerful things I thought that was said on Joe Biden's campaign trail was when Barack Obama said, do you know, if Joe is in the White House when he was campaigning first time round, if Joe is in the White House, some days you might not even hear from him. And coming after sort of deluge of Donald Trump's first term, that sounded quite refreshing. So, yes, Biden was not seen every day, not by any stretch of the imagination, but Trump has this hold over the American imagination. So any absence, I mean, even a few hours, people start to wonder what he's up to.
Yeah, well, it's the Trump show. And let's be honest, we are all watching it. The vice president, J.D. Vance, didn't really help matters because he said this in a TV interview with USA Today.
President is in incredibly good health. He's got incredible energy. And while most of the people who work around the president of the United States are younger than he is, I think that we find that he actually is the last person who goes to sleep. He's the last person making phone calls at night. And he's the first person who wakes up and the first person making phone calls in the morning. So yes, things can always happen. Yes, terrible tragedies happen. But I feel very confident the president of the United States is in good shape, is going to serve out the remainder of his term and do great things for the American people. And if, God forbid, there's a terrible tragedy, I can't think of better on-the-job training than what I've got.
Okay, J.D. Vance probably not doing a lot to ease Trump fans' fears. But it is a bit bizarre, Harriet, isn't it? When J.D. Vance says how fit the president is, but we can't, and he can't dodge the reality, which that he doesn't look fit. He's nearly 80. He's got a mysterious bruise on his hand. He's overweight. We know he has this other condition, which I know is not uncommon at all, but the one that makes his ankles swell up. Surely, not even his greatest fan can continue to say that, quotes, he looks fit.
Yes, and I mean, Donald Trump, by anyone else's standards, would be, you know, on a pretty ruinous lifestyle choice. We obviously know all about his fast food fandom, how he loves the McDonald's and the Diet Cokes. We know that he doesn't do any exercise because he's written about it in one of his books where he said that his philosophy is that, you know, you have a certain amount of energy, and if you do any exercise, then you lose your energy, so it's not very good for you. He's angry all the time, and he doesn't get a lot of sleep. We know he's doing all these late night phone calls. So, you know, that is not anyone else's recipe for vitality and strength and efficiency. But for Donald Trump, you know, he's 79. He's the oldest president ever inaugurated. And he's pretty lively. He's pretty strong, it seems. And on Sunday, when all of this speculation was mounting, it obviously got to him because he tweeted he had never felt better in all my life. All in capitals, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that won't be the truth either, will it? Because I very much doubt that at the age of 79, I'll be feeling better than I've ever felt in my life. I mean, it's a deeply suspect state.
Some people just have a stronger constitution, even if they have a unhealthy lifestyle. I wouldn't say that Trump is healthy by any standard of common sense. He could be a lot healthier if he paid attention to his diet. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 35. It's 35 parts per million, or Cleanse, which is 30 parts per million. But take a teaspoon a day every day, swish it in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and swallow. What that will do is improve your oral cavity, your oral pharynx, help with the epithelial lining, increase your mucosal barrier, and boost up your immune system. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well, especially in the fall and the winter, take a tablespoon or two a day, every day, and then once everything is all clear, then go back to your maintenance dose. But take this every day, super important. And it's part of my anti-aging protocol. It's the first pillar of the anti-aging protocol. The foundation, multivitamins and probiotics. The first pillar, the Max 35 or Cleanse. Second pillar, C60. Third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. Boost up that immune system. And the fourth pillar, Boomer Boost, to rev up the metabolism and shoot up those energy levels. And go to my store and get the collagen. Dual purpose, helps with your skin, hair, and nails, but also with your musculature, your bone density, and joint health. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. It's very high quality collagen. And the gels, you can get it in a tube form or in the quick dispenser. Have some at work or at home. It's dual purpose. You can use it as an aftershave, a daily skincare. You can put it on a wound and it'll help to heal the wound because it keeps it clean. And if you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well, especially in the fall or the winter, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. Better be prepared, especially for this fall and winter. All right, with that said, let's go to Fox News, and it looks like they're interviewing Ben Shapiro about colleges.
Connect with a financial advisor at Private.com, where money means more.
Scroll less, learn more. Find your school district's plan at ny.gov/phone free.
College students heading back to class this week, and Governor Kathy Hochul of New York is hoping to avoid another semester of pro-Palestinian, anti-Semitic protests on campus. You think? New York signing a new law requiring every campus in the state to appoint a Title VI anti-discrimination coordinator within the next year. The coordinator will investigate complaints and provide training modeled after their gender bias teams. Let's hope this works. This is an all-new report shows House Republicans are investigating UCLA, UCSF, University of Illinois, College of Medicine, all for failing to address anti-Semitism on their campuses last semester. So when it comes to the Trump administration's fight against colleges, they are refusing to back down.
Linda, how about it? We want nothing less than $500 million from Harvard. Don't negotiate, Linda. They've been very bad. How are you doing with the colleges, by the way? You're doing some pretty good work in terms of getting them to treat people fairly.
Well, interestingly enough, since we've been negotiating with some of the Ivy League schools, I have presidents of universities calling every single week. They want to sit down and talk to us about all of the steps that they are taking because they would like to not come under the same investigative program. And so it is having its desired effect.
That's great. It all sounds good, and I'm sure Harvard's going to cave shortly. Joining us right now for more on the state of college campuses is the host of the Ben Shapiro podcast, the author of the brand new book, Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America, Ben Shapiro. Ben, I know we hope anti-Semitism's in our rearview mirror. What do you expect this year, knowing the school?
I am not a fan of Ben Shapiro at all. At all. I find him to be sleazy, and there's something about him that is there's a fakery. Now, part of it is I think what it is that he's tied into this whole, he has a law degree, my understanding, and his wife is an MD. He has hubris because he's a podcaster, and he thinks he's a know-it-all, and he thinks he's some sort of intellectual, and has some sort of he believes that he has the moral high ground. Right? I'm not a fan of him. I don't know what he's going to say. I may agree with him. If he says something I'll agree with, I'll mention it. But the thing is that there's something about his personality that I do not like. I don't know if it's his eyebrows or something about him. It's just I don't like.
So I don't care what they think, are gonna have to literally pay a price if it gets out of control again.
I mean, I think that it's going to be significantly less bad this year, specifically because of the Trump administration. I mean, if you had gotten Kamala Harris, God forbid, then the protests would have been totally out of control, given the fact that the war in Gaza is ongoing and the fact that places like Colombia are in Zohran Mamdani's soon-to-be mayoralty. So, I think that the Trump administration saying that Title VI will, in fact, be enforced, that you guys are going to have to pay the price, the administration, if they don't do what they're supposed to do in quashing anti-Semitic college campus crimes, and here we're not talking about free speech issues, we're talking about discriminatory environments, preventing people from getting to class, violence, and all the rest. The Trump administration has been doing an excellent job here. I think you'll see a lot more colleges comply with the law.
I mean, it's unbelievable that we had Joe Biden just not say a word, and Chuck Schumer, a Jewish New Yorker, watch the rage at Columbia, NYU, City College, and not really say anything. How is that acceptable? You wrote a book about anti-Semitism.
Well, I mean, it's disgraceful, but Schumer himself is a disgrace. His claims to be some sort of great fighter against anti-Semitism keep running up against reality, and he keeps coming up short.
I want you to bring it to this soundbite from last week. We had Noah Tishby on, and she says the problem is not just in college; it starts before that. Listen to this.
This is not starting out of nowhere in college campus. What has been going on is a severe indoctrination that is K through 12 all through our education system. We saw a lot of things that are extremely concerning. They're talking about oppressor and oppressed, putting everything through these paradigms, putting the Jews into the oppressor category, completely ignoring thousands of years of oppression against the Jewish people, completely ignoring history.
So that's more concerning than the colleges, because colleges, you make a choice. You're born a lot of times into your school because it's in your neighborhood. Is this a real threat in your mind?
It is, and I think that anti-Semitism in this context is merely sort of a symptom of a broader evil that you hear Noah sort of refer to in passing, which is this oppressor-oppressed matrix. The scavengers, as I call them, this sort of weird agglomeration of people, the queers for Palestine, and the third worlders against capitalism and all this kind of stuff, that all these people march together because they have decided that American society, Western society, Israel, all of these are indicative of a system that is oppressive and evil and exploitative and must be torn down to the ground. And the way you can tell if somebody is an oppressor is if they're successful. And the way that you can tell somebody is oppressed is if they are a failure. And by that logic, what you're going to get is what Franz Fanon called the wretched of the earth, this kind of giant conglomeration of people who come together just to tear things down. And that's being built up not just in the K-12 system, it's being built up on social media, it's being built up by foreign actors. I mean, it really is the great battle of our time intellectually.
Yeah, I just think it's up to parents. It's no longer sneaking up on you. Find out what your kids are studying, ask to see their homework and their day work. I want to bring you to something else, and feel free to punt on this if you want. But the Washington Post broke down MAGA supporters into 5 categories. MAGA populists, traditional Republicans, I guess the George Bush, Mitt Romney types, small government conservatives and fiscal hawks, more Mike Pence, religious right, that's Mike Pence too, the tech right, we're seeing that with a lot of the AI guys, and now the revitalized Silicon Valley, and the Maha guys, led by RFK, a traditional Democrat. Do you think there's some validity to those categories? And if so, where do you put yourself?
I do think there's some validity to those categories. I think they all have fuzzy edges. I mean, you can certainly consider yourself sort of a populist Republican who has traditional leanings in terms of actual policy. But obviously, there are wide gaps between sort of the libertarian tech bro types and the social conservatives. There are big gaps in terms of foreign policy. between some of the more populist types and some of the more traditionalist types. I will say that it's a somewhat uneasy coalition from time to time.
Yes.
And I think that it's unified against the left. But I do think that President Trump, being extraordinarily pragmatic, has been able to bridge all those gaps. It is going to be fascinating to see which direction the Republican Party moves in any sort of post-Trump era, because there is no Trumpism. There really is only Trump. And so a lot of those issues are still very much up for grabs.
You know, like Washington, they said was the only one who could have kept everybody together. And when he left, we began breaking up with the party politics. I'm not saying that Donald Trump's George Washington, but he might be the only one to be able to keep all five together. And the next man or woman is going to have a hard time with the lasso. We'll see. But you can't win without all of them, believe me. Leslie, real quick, I love what the president's doing on culture, celebrating America's 250th, and he's starting with the Smithsonian. Stop with the political correctnness and start celebrating America. Are you comfortable with this?
I mean, I think it's wonderful. I think that the Smithsonian has shown itself to be, unfortunately, a tool of left-wing agitprop on so many occasions, and actually infusing, our national institutions with a pride in America would certainly be a valuable thing. The president is smart enough and savvy enough to understand that politics and culture, you can say that politics is downstream of culture, but really it's a cycle and they feed one another, and the president understands that.
Yeah, like he points out the African American Museum. Yes, slavery is terrible. We should definitely talk about segregation, but talk about how we overcame it and where we're at now. That's telling the American story, not ducking it. Ben Shapiro, congratulations on your success. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News You.
I agree with Ben Shapiro right now, but I mean, there's something about his personality I just do not like. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. Super important to get healthy. It's a powder. It's a high-density protein. Take it every day and detoxify that body. Gladiator barley. Get all the benefits of heirloom barley in gladiator barley, but you also get one additional benefit, and that is building muscle. Stacks really well with Myotrol. You do resistance training, take gladiator barley. They'll help you to build that muscle, bring down inflammation, you'll recover quicker, and soaks up free radicals and detoxifies your body. And it'll help to control your blood glucose levels. Stacks really well with Myotrol, C60, and Boomer Boost. And let's talk about Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost is a very comprehensive compound. It's a powder. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. But you take it every day. And it's a great way to lose weight if you want to lose weight. The way you do it to lose weight is that you use this for your meal, for breakfast or for lunch, not and, or breakfast or lunch. And you mix it with soft foods like yogurt or hummus or even applesauce. And you do that every day. And then have a balanced but restricted calorie intake for the remaining of your meals. Preferably a 2,000 calorie or slightly less, depending on what your BMI target is. You want to lose weight at approximately 2 to 3 pounds per week. All right. At the very beginning, you might lose more weight depending on your BMI, but you want roughly around 2 pounds per week. And what will happen is that you're going to have lots of energy. You won't have to worry about being tired or anything. You're going to have steady levels of energy throughout the day. And it's a great way to lose weight. Now, if you don't want to lose weight, you're at your target BMI, then you just take it with your regular calories and you just take it as a supplement every day. But you'll also notice multiple benefits. It's going to help with your heart and your vascular system. It'll help you build muscle. This is part of the reason why it stacks really well with gladiator barley. And you're going to notice that it's going to rev up your energy levels and rev up your metabolism. And your brain function is going to improve. You're going to be able to concentrate better. You're going to be sleeping better. Your memory, your consolidation of that memory, the dendritic connections, your neural health is going to improve. This is very powerful stuff. You should be taking this every day. Now, if you're an athlete, take this for your pre and your post-workout fueling, especially if you're like a triathlete or a marathon runner. It's powerful stuff, and many different types of people can benefit from it. You can lose weight with it, you can just slow down the aging process with it, or you can use it as a supplement if you're an athlete. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. And lastly, C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant, and you take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach. Take it every day, and you will soak up free radicals, help the health of the mitochondria. Your energy levels are going to go up. You'll have more ATP. You're reducing the stress at the cellular level and at the tissue level. So your organ systems are going to perform better. Your immune system will perform better. Your endocrine system will perform better, and even your brain function. This will help the health of the neurons, bring down stress in the neuron, help with the health of the myelin sheath, and boost up the energy levels because it's helping the health of the mitochondria. So if the neuron has more ATP and healthy mitochondria, you're going to be able to produce the neurotransmitters that you need for proper communication between neurons. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, or extra virgin olive oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer and help support the work that I do. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.